My name is Valeria Ashcroft, and the day I bought my son a $300,000 car was the day I realized I had been raising a stranger. The morning began quietly. Sunlight spread across the marble floors of my house, soft and golden, the way it does when the world wants you to believe everything is peaceful. The staff moved through the kitchen preparing coffee, and outside the city slowly woke beneath a clear sky. Lucian's birthday had always meant something to me. For 32 years, I had marked that day carefully. When he was little, birthdays meant toy rockets, chocolate cake, and the sound of his laughter echoing through our small house. Later, as my company grew and life became louder, the gifts became larger: private schools, summer programs abroad, his first apartment. Each year I tried to make the day perfect. Perhaps that was my first mistake. Lucian had been my only child, my only living connection to the life I once shared with his father. When Adrian died suddenly of a heart attack, Lucian was 11 and I was left with two choices: collapse or build something strong enough that my son would never feel the loss. I chose to build. The small consulting firm Adrian and I started turned into something larger than I ever expected. Contracts became partnerships. Partnerships became acquisitions. Years passed in boardrooms and airports, negotiations and late-night strategy meetings. But every decision I made had one silent purpose: Lucian. I wanted him to grow up without fear, without limits, without the quiet instability that follows loss. At first, he understood. When he was younger, he used to sit in my office after school, doing homework on the couch while I worked. Sometimes he would fall asleep there, his head against a stack of files. I remember carrying him to the car one night, thinking how small he felt in my arms. Back then, he used to say something that made my heart ache. "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you." Children say things like that easily. They don't know how the world changes people. By the time Lucian reached his 20s, the boy who once waited quietly in my office had become a man who moved through rooms as if they belonged to him. Confident, attractive, the kind of man people naturally gravitated toward, but confidence can slowly transform into something else if it is never challenged. Lucian had never truly struggled, not with money, not with opportunity, not with consequence. Whenever a problem appeared, my influence or resources quietly removed it. At first it felt like protection. Later it became permission. I saw the changes long before anyone else. The way he spoke about people as if they were assets or obstacles. The way success mattered more to him than character. The subtle impatience he showed when things did not arrive quickly enough. Still, I convinced myself it was temporary. Ambition. Youth, the natural arrogance of someone raised around power. But deep down, I suspected something uncomfortable. Perhaps I had not protected Lucian from hardship. Perhaps I had protected him from reality. That thought stayed with me the morning I finalized the purchase. The Bugatti sat inside a private showroom downtown, hidden beneath a satin cover. The dealership manager spoke about craftsmanship and rarity while guiding me around the car. Hand-built engine, custom interior, midnight graphite paint that shifted color in sunlight, $300,000. He said the number carefully as if testing whether it frightened me. It didn't. Numbers like that had long ago stopped feeling real. What mattered was Lucian's reaction. I imagined his face when he saw it. Surprise, gratitude, maybe even pride. Perhaps I still believed there was a version of my son who would look at me the way he once did when he was small. The delivery was arranged for that evening. Lucian had organized a birthday celebration at a rooftop club overlooking the city. His friends would be there, along with a handful of business associates and people from the strange new world he had begun to inhabit. Social media personalities, investors, people who seemed permanently surrounded by cameras. The car would be waiting near the entrance, wrapped with a silver ribbon. An unforgettable moment. That was the phrase the dealership manager used. And he was right. It was unforgettable, just not for the reasons I imagined. When I arrived that evening, the rooftop was alive with music and laughter. Lucian stood near the bar surrounded by guests, wearing a tailored black suit that made him look every inch the successful entrepreneur he liked the world to see. For a moment, I watched him from a distance. The way he spoke, the way people leaned in when he talked. He had inherited that from his father, the ability to command a room without raising his voice. Lucien noticed me a few seconds later and smiled. "Mom," he said, walking over to greet me, "you made it." "Of course I did, I always did. Happy birthday," I said. He hugged me quickly, already turning his attention back toward the party. And that was when someone near the entrance shouted, "Hey, what's that car?" The music softened as people turned. Under the soft rooftop lights, the Bugatti gleamed like a piece of dark glass. Lucien walked toward it slowly, curiosity spreading across his face. I followed behind him, the ribbon shimmered in the wind. "What is this?" he asked. I held out the key. "Your birthday gift." For a moment the rooftop fell completely silent. Lucien looked from the key to the car and back again, then he laughed, not softly, loudly. The kind of laugh people make when something unbelievable happens. "No way," he said. Phones appeared instantly. Cameras lifted. Lucien circled the car, touching the hood as if confirming it was real. "This is insane," he said. Someone whistled. Another person started clapping. Lucien raised the key in the air like a trophy. "My mother just bought me a Bugatti," he announced. Applause spread through the crowd. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to feel proud. Maybe this would remind him of something deeper than wealth. Maybe this would bring back the gratitude I remembered from years ago, but pride can vanish very quickly. Lucien turned back toward the crowd, still laughing. "You know," he said loudly, "I guess guilt finally paid off." The laughter that followed sounded very different, and that was the moment everything changed. The laughter that followed Lucien's words did not sound cruel at first. It sounded uncertain, like people laughing because they believed they were supposed to. "I guess guilt finally paid off." The sentence hung in the air above the rooftop, floating between the glowing skyline and the expensive glasses in everyone's hands. Lucien was still smiling, holding the Bugatti key between his fingers like a small trophy. At first, I thought he might stop there, that perhaps the comment had simply been an awkward attempt at humor. But Lucien had always been someone who enjoyed an audience, and the crowd around him had grown larger. Phones were raised now, quietly recording. A few of his friends leaned closer, waiting for the next line. Lucien shrugged casually and looked around. "You know how it is," he continued, his voice relaxed. "When parents spend your childhood building companies instead of actually raising you, eventually they start buying really expensive apologies." The laughter grew louder this time. Someone near the back said, "Fair trade." Another voice added, "Best apology ever." I stood a few feet away from him, watching. The strange thing about humiliation is that it rarely feels like a sudden explosion. It feels like slow pressure, like something tightening around your chest. Lucien turned slightly toward me again. His smile looked easy, comfortable. "But I appreciate it," he said lightly, gesturing toward the car. $300,000 is a solid start." A ripple of chuckles spread through the group. Someone clapped him on the shoulder. "Your mom knows how to make up for lost time." Lucien laughed again. "Oh, she's trying." More laughter. I felt several pairs of eyes glance toward me, some curious, some embarrassed, others simply entertained. And suddenly I understood something very clearly. Lucien didn't believe he was being cruel, he believed he was being clever. Because in his mind the story was simple. A distant mother, a neglected child, a dramatic apology. The audience loved stories like that. They were easy. They required no reflection. Lucien stepped closer to the car, running his hand across the smooth graphite surface. "You should have seen the house when I was growing up," he continued. "Empty half the time, just staff walking around." The rooftop had grown quieter now. He didn't notice. "When you're a kid, you don't understand business meetings and investors," he said. "You just notice when your parent misses dinner again." The words were calm, measured. But they carried a quiet accusation that had clearly been waiting for years. For a moment, I studied his face. Lucien looked confident, certain, but I noticed something small beneath that confidence. The same thing I had seen days earlier in the classroom, stories he used to tell about other people. a need for validation. Lucien wasn't just speaking to the crowd, he was testing them, waiting to see if they would agree with him. And they did, because people almost always agree with whoever holds the most attention. I mean, Lucien added with a laugh, I'm not saying the car fixes everything. Someone asked jokingly, what would fix everything? Lucien pretended to think about it. Maybe another one next year. The crowd laughed again, this time louder. The skyline shimmered behind them, the city lights blinking like distant stars. I realized something in that moment that surprised even me. I wasn't angry. Not really, anger is loud, sharp. But what I felt instead was a quiet clarity spreading through my thoughts. Because Lucien wasn't wrong about one thing, I had missed dinners, school events, long stretches of time where business consumed my attention. But what he didn't understand was why. Lucien believed I worked to build wealth. In truth, I worked to build security, for him, for us. And now, standing beneath the rooftop lights, I saw the result of that protection. A man who believed success arrived naturally. A man who believed love could be measured in transactions. A man who thought humiliation was simply entertainment. Lucien turned back toward me. Don't take it personally, Mom, he said with a playful grin. It's just honesty. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. The music had stopped completely now, no one was speaking. Because the line between humor and cruelty had become impossible to ignore, I stepped forward slowly. Lucien watched me approach. His smile remained in place, but I noticed something new in his eyes, curiosity. Perhaps he expected me to laugh with him, or defend myself, or apologize again. Instead, I simply stood beside the car and looked at him calmly. Lucien, I said, my voice was quiet. But the silence around us made it carry easily. Yes, Mother, he replied lightly. Do you remember the telescope? His expression changed slightly. What? The telescope I bought you when you were 7. He frowned, confused by the question. No, you used it every night that summer, I continued. You told me you wanted to see the entire universe. A few people in the crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Lucien glanced around as if unsure why the story mattered. Mom, what are you doing? You dropped it from the balcony, I said. Lucien's impatience grew. I don't remember. You cried for nearly an hour, I said calmly. The rooftop was completely silent now. And then you asked me something? Lucien's jaw tightened. What? You asked if I still loved you even though you broke something expensive. His expression hardened. And what did you say? I told you love isn't measured by price. Lucien looked irritated. Mom, we're not talking about telescopes. No, I agreed gently. We're talking about value. The wind moved softly across the rooftop. The ribbon on the Bugatti fluttered slightly. Lucien stared at me. For the first time that evening, he looked uncertain. And that was when I reached into my purse. The real key rested in my hand. Lucien hadn't noticed the difference earlier. Almost no one does. Because most people only see what they expect to see, I held the key up briefly. Lucien's eyes narrowed. What's that? And in that moment, the audience realized something important was about to happen. The wind moved gently across the rooftop, lifting the silver ribbon tied across the hood of the Bugatti. Everyone was watching now. No music, no laughter, just the quiet sound of the city below. Lucien's eyes stayed fixed on the key in my hand. He looked confused at first, then suspicious. Mom, what is that? He asked again. His voice no longer carried the playful confidence it had only minutes earlier. I turned the key slowly between my fingers. The metal caught the light. The real key, I said calmly. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Lucien blinked. What do you mean real key? I glanced briefly toward the car behind him. The one I gave you earlier, I said, was a presentation key. Dealerships use them for photographs. A few people shifted their weight uncomfortably. Someone lowered their phone. Lucien laughed again, but the laugh was thin now. Okay, very funny, he said. So give me the other one. I didn't move. For a moment, Lucien waited, then his smile began to fade. Mom. I walked past him toward the Bugatti. The crowd instinctively stepped aside, creating a quiet path between us and the car. Lucien followed. His footsteps sounded faster than before. "Mom, seriously," he said quietly now. "What are you doing?" I opened the driver's door. The interior lights came alive, revealing the hand-stitched leather and polished carbon fiber. The engine start button glowed softly. Lucien's voice sharpened. "Wait." I turned and looked at him. For the first time that night, he didn't look like the confident man who had been entertaining a rooftop full of guests. He looked uncertain, and uncertainty was new to him. "You can't be serious," he said. The crowd was completely silent now. A few guests glanced at each other because suddenly the story had changed. I stepped into the car slowly. The seat adjusted automatically beneath me. Lucien moved closer. "Mom, just stop," he said under his breath. I pressed the ignition. The engine came alive with a deep, controlled growl that vibrated through the rooftop. Several people stepped back instinctively. Lucien stared at me through the open door. "What are you doing?" I looked at him calmly. "You said something interesting earlier." His jaw tightened. "What?" "That this car was an apology." Lucien said nothing. "You believed I bought it out of guilt." The engine hummed quietly. Lucien's confidence was gone now. His voice lowered. "Mom, we were joking." "No," I said gently. "You were explaining how you see me." The rooftop lights reflected across the windshield like distant stars. "For years," I continued, "I thought I was giving you everything a parent should give a child." Lucien shifted uncomfortably. "Opportunity, security, freedom." I paused for a moment. "But I see now that I also gave you something else." Lucien swallowed. "What?" "The belief that love is a transaction." The words settled heavily in the air. Lucien shook his head quickly. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" His voice rose slightly. "Mom, you're overreacting." Several guests quietly moved farther away now, because the tension had become unmistakable. I reached forward and placed the key into the ignition slot. "You said $300,000 was the minimum price for my absence." Lucien's voice softened. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that." "But you did," I replied. And for the first time, Lucien had no response. He stood there staring at me, his confidence stripped away by something he had never faced before. Consequences. The engine purred quietly. "I worked for decades," I said calmly. "Not to buy forgiveness." Lucien's breathing had become shallow, "but to build a future." He ran a hand through his hair. "Mom, people are watching." "Yes," I said, "they are." That realization seemed to hit him harder than anything else. The audience that had laughed with him earlier was now watching a very different scene. Lucien lowered his voice. "Please just stop this." I looked at him for a long moment. And suddenly I saw him not as the man he pretended to be, but as the boy he once was. The boy who dropped a telescope and cried because he thought he had disappointed me. The boy who once promised he would take care of me someday. But people change, and sometimes the only way they change again is through truth. "I love you, Lucien," I said quietly. His eyes widened slightly. "But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect." The wind moved softly through the rooftop again. I closed the door. Lucien took a step forward. "Mom," but the window slid up between us. The engine responded instantly when I pressed the accelerator. The Bugatti rolled forward slowly. Lucien stood frozen in the center of the rooftop, the same place where he had been laughing minutes earlier, but the laughter had disappeared. Because humiliation feels very different when the audience changes sides. As I reached the exit ramp, I looked once more in the rearview mirror. Lucien looked smaller now, not physically, but emotionally. Like someone seeing their reflection clearly for the first time. And sometimes that moment is the beginning of becoming a better person, or the moment they realize the world will no longer protect them. Either way, the lesson had finally begun.